Good evening, everybody. Welcome along to the EFL Debate League 2 podcast. And I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host for the night, Chris Windsor, our Bradford City supporter. Great to have you on the podcast and have you in the playoff equation, Chris.
How crazy is that? I mean, if we were talking a month ago, probably even 3 weeks ago, would we really be saying that the Bradford City have got an opportunity to be in the playoffs? Absolutely not. But here we are. One game to go. There's that potential. Obviously, it's not in our hands, but let's see what happens on Saturday.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it to you sort of speculatively that City might have like an outside chance of making a late dart a couple of weeks ago, but I never really felt like you'd do it. But the form has been absolutely phenomenal. I think it's 5 wins in 6 or 6 in 7. I've just been so impressed by the late run of form. But I guess it's also the low points bar. It might be about 70 points that gets you into the playoffs in League 2, which would be the lowest tally it's been since Blackpool got in there and went up in 16-17.
Yeah, I think that just explains everything about this league this season. It seems like for the last 2 or 3 months where we've had the teams that have been consistently in that playoff position have maybe slumped off a little bit. Obviously, we've got Doncaster there that are on this incredible run phenomenal run.
20th at the start of March, Chris. When have you ever seen anything like that happen before?
And we've talked about that, Gab, and to be honest with you, I don't believe I've ever seen anything like that. No. Certainly not. And the form.
Well, and you've been following football a lot longer than
just a couple of years longer than you, Gab. But yeah, I think honestly, just to see that team, we've played them 3 times this year. And I think after the first 2 games when we played them earlier on, we also played them in the Mickey Mouse Cup. The FL Trophy, and there was nothing to really.
I thought you were going to call the Mickey Mouse Cup the FA Cup, the way it's going.
Well, that's probably another discussion for a different day. But I think that looking at Donny and their performances and how they keep doing it, they're a different team. They're a completely different team. They've stuck by Grant McCann, which is recommendable, and he's showing them why he should do. And for me, I think at the moment they're potentially the team to beat. I think it's gonna be interesting. I mean, let's see what Saturday brings, and let's see what that concrete. Well, what is going to be the teams that are in that playoff positions, and I think we're in for a really exciting playoff campaign.
Certainly are. Well, with that in mind, we'll bring in Taylor, who's a Barrow fan. Possibly not the ideal timing to talk to a Bradford City fan, given Tuesday's events. Taylor, bit gutted by that late sucker punch.
Yeah, I've no words to describe sort of what the last few weeks have been. It's gone from what seems like a formality in terms of we literally need like 2 wins and we just can't seem to do it. I don't know what has happened in these last few weeks, but I think that Bradford game just sort of summed it all up, to be honest. The first 45 minutes, we just looked dreadful. Just a team that just did not look like a team going for the playoffs. Whereas Bradford looked energetic, up for it. I'm surprised they probably didn't get a second. They had some really good chances to score a second, which would have killed the game off completely. We were very fortunate with the goal that we got. And then we had a bit of a sort of 10-15 minute spell where we were like, it's a good chance to try and go on and win the game. But the substitutions killed it for me. And from that point onwards, Bradford sort of asserted themselves as the better side again. And I probably got what they deserved in the end, if I have to be completely honest. Like I said, they look the better team over the 90 minutes. So they bring themselves into the equation going into the last day.
I know you said, Taylor, that it's difficult for you to, or you've no idea what's caused this late run, but can you sort of try and give us a bit of an inkling? Do you think it's lack of squad depth? Do you think it's the other theory I would come up with is Pete Wild is such a passionate manager that really brings the emotion into the games? Is it almost a case of you've peaked too early in terms of the energy and the commitment, and you've not got much left out of the tank. I'm trying to sort of work it out a little bit.
I think it's just a combination of things personally. I think at times we've lacked in certain areas. Injuries haven't helped. I mean, we lost Junior Tiencia, who had a really good start to the season quite early on, and that's been quite a miss at times. We've not quite had that the depth in that area. Obviously, George Ray's been suspended the last few games. That hasn't helped things. But there's no excuse in terms of that. I think, unfortunately, as much as I love Pete Wild, I think at times he's sort of been our own worst enemy when it comes to. There's been a lot of when these results haven't been going our way, it's, well, this is the club's greatest position. The fans should be grateful for that. We're still on course for the best season we've ever had. And it's like, well, we're in this position. Like, why should we settle for not something that's not good enough at the moment? We shouldn't be in this position. We need to look at where we're at and go, we need to now kick on and ensure that we get these playoffs, because we've been here the whole season. We can't now decide that we can settle for just 8th place, 9th place. That isn't good enough at this point in time. We've been here the whole season. We can't afford to just go, well, this is the best season we've ever had, and that's good enough. It's not. We're better than that, and we can't afford to continue to have this mentality of we're just little Barrow. We can't, if we're going to have that mentality for forever and ever and never look to try and move on from that, we're going to continue to just settle for 8th place, 9th place, irrespective of where we're at. And personally, it's not good enough if we don't get these playoff places, and the performances over the past few weeks have not been good enough, and rightfully so. The players are being criticised for that. Obviously, we're grateful for where we're at, but it doesn't mean that the players and the management who are making mistakes are immune from criticism, because they're making the wrong decisions and they're not playing as good as they should.
Taylor, I'd say one thing about Tuesday night. I felt you've kind of talked about it a little bit about how you felt that Bradford were the better team. I think what I found was, certainly in that first half, was probably the lack of confidence, which really kind of surprised me. I felt that you were off the pace. I felt that Smallwood at times was completely controlling midfield. I felt that we probably had a little bit more energy than you did. So kind of going into like the Mansfield game, what do you think is going to happen on Saturday? Do you think that the team are going to finally turn up? Are they going to get that little bit, that 6th gear? Do you think that we're going to see that on Saturday?
If I'm completely honest, no. I think these players are just lost. I don't think they've got the confidence anymore. I think at times I think we've been one of those sides that we do have a lot of younger players. We do have some experience in the ranks, but at times we've sort of got those players that just lack the ability to kick on when it matters. And I think we're starting to see some of those players realise where they're at, and the pressure's getting to them, and they're not up for the fight anymore. I mean, on Tuesday night, the midfield was non-existent in that first 45 minutes. The two strikers, Stockton and Aqua, were isolated beyond belief. They had absolutely no support at all. Usually we'd have Spence supporting the two, but he was being pinned back so much because everyone else was just sitting behind the ball. And even when we were sitting behind the balls were still somehow getting over the top of the defence. It's like, how are we sitting so far back? And balls are still getting knocked over the top, and we're still second to every ball. It's just looked like a team that were devoid of any confidence and couldn't handle the pressure of such a big game. I don't think Saturday helped when obviously we were 2-0 up at Doncaster and then squandered that and lost. I really don't think that helped. But it's a completely different game. You've got to go into it with a new mentality and look to, especially at home, you've got to look to really kick on. We've been tremendous at home all season, and when it matters, we're struggling. We're not making it the fortress that it was earlier on in the season. And Bradford looked miles and miles better than us, especially in that first half, like you say. So I'm incredibly worried that Mansfield are going to turn up and just have an absolute field day with us, because I just genuinely don't think these players can handle the pressure. I really, really hope I'm wrong, and I really hope we turn up and make the most of a Mansfield team, which in theory have nothing to play for and are likely going to be on the beach. But it's a lot easier to say than that may not happen. You know, that these teams can turn up and go, well, it's the last day. Irrespective of nothing to play for, they'll turn up and still put about 5 past us if we're not careful. So we've got to really kick on, and I hope Pete Wild is saying something completely different to what he's saying in interviews and whatnot, because I'm sorry, but if we do not get these playoffs, it's not acceptable.
Do you think one thing, though, Taylor, that Pete Wild's trying to do is actually take some of the pressure off the players? Because you've said there that the players are struggling with the pressure. Some of them are young, and the mental setback of losing some of these games, like, for example, at Doncaster, where you're 2-0 up and lost 4-2, or against Bradford, where it was a 90th minute goal. You've sort of alluded to it, that the players are maybe feeling the pressure. So do you think Pete Wild, by making some of these comments and trying to introduce the bigger picture, is actually just trying to alleviate some of that pressure off his players?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be remiss to think that what he's saying in one breath is completely different to what he's saying in another breath, you know, behind closed doors. We know managers will do that. They'll come out and criticise. I mean, Pete Wild's admitted it in the past. He's come out in an interview and said, you know, we were unlucky, but behind closed doors, he absolutely slammed the team, said they weren't good enough. And then the next week came out and admitted it. So, you know, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. And he could be saying these things as a way to alleviate the pressure. But I think fans will take things at face value sometimes. And when we're seeing these poor performances, we want to see a manager that says this isn't good enough, and we want to make sure that we get these playoff places. So I can understand it from both angles. I just hope that on Saturday we see a completely different side to what we've seen the past few weeks. I mean, what is it? Five losses in 6 against sides that at times we really should be beating. I mean, Swindon at home, we have to win that game. A Swindon side that have absolutely nothing to play for at home, you've got to go and win that. Morecambe away, Morecambe again, a side hit and miss. Okay, you know, it's a loss. But again, it's a team that we probably should be looking to try and beat. You know, I just think there's results that we've seen that earlier on in the season we'd be winning these games, and I think the pressure has just sort of got to us. And like I said, I just hope Saturday is a completely different performance. I think against Doncaster, the first 45 minutes, we were largely a good side. We defended really well. And then in that second half, I think the substitutions, like I've said, were wrong, and we paid the price for it. And I think that's a huge problem as well, which we've seen probably since January. I don't know if, you know, beforehand we were just overlooking it because of the results, but I think substitutions at times have been baffling beyond belief. And I think we paid the price in a lot of games for poor substitutions and poor tactical decisions, which I think, as much as I love Pete Wild, and I think he's a fantastic manager and he's brought so much to this club, I think that is his one weak area when it comes to substitutions and changing the game. I think that is where he is weak.
Taylor, let's say that Saturday turns out different to what you think. You do go on and you get your point, or you beat Mansfield. What will your thoughts be for the playoffs? What will your hopes be? Obviously, I understand you're quite disappointed at the moment with how the season's faltering away, but there's still that opportunity. You've still got that chance of the playoffs. You know, you're in prime position right now. What should we see from you in the playoffs? What do you think will happen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we do get these playoffs, fantastic, great. Like, that's what we expect at this point in time. We've been there amongst it for pretty much the start of the season. So, like I've said, we expect that we should be getting these at bare minimum. But I think one thing that we've been largely good at is keeping games close. You know, away from home, our form hasn't been good enough. We haven't won away since Christmas, but we've largely been able to keep games fairly close. So I think if we do get these playoffs, then we'll take that mentality and we'll keep games close so that in the return, like at home, we'll have, even if the other team comes in with an advantage, it should be a slender advantage because, like I said, we've been good at keeping games fairly compact and close. We've not exactly been turned over too many times. So we should hopefully be able to try and keep that close. And then at home, make Hawker Street a fortress of what it has been and allow ourselves to then kick on and make sure that we win that return. Like in the end, obviously win on aggregate and get through. But I just hope that if we do get these playoffs, it's a fresh start. We turn a new corner and we just see a completely different, refreshed Barrow that take the games at face value, that don't think about the last few weeks. It's a completely fresh start, a new opportunity to really go at these games and just take them for what they are and just really push and push and push and push, and hopefully we'll get the job done. But like I said, we've just got to make sure that we get them first, and then obviously we'll go from there, and hopefully we'll take the first value and do what we can do, because we have a good side. We've gone and beat some of the best sides in the division, got some very good results this season. So we are capable. So we're just going to ensure that we do our best and obviously make sure that we get those for the playoffs first and foremost, and then obviously assert ourselves the best way we can. I mean, like MK Dons, we've gone and beat them at home. We've drawn with them away. So that's one side that haven't beat us this season. Crewe, we beat at their place, they beat us ours. So we've got these like results that we are able to compete with these sides. So we've nothing to fear. We've just got to take it at face value and take these playoffs as the individual games of what they are and ignore the past few weeks.
Right. Well, hopefully Barrow can put together a much improved performance against Mansfield on Saturday, because I think that's certainly needed as a way to finish off the season. And it is still in your own hands. Probably sounds more worrying than than reassuring, perhaps. But Taylor, thank you so much for your insight. It's great to get your thoughts on Barrow, and thanks for joining us.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me once again.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, so I suppose, do you know what, Chris? I wanted to pick up on some of Taylor's points there about managers in general, because I often feel a little bit for managers sometimes when an expectation before the season is one thing, and then they win a few get, like Mark Bonner, for example, at Cambridge. They were above the drop zone when he got sacked, but it was because of the ordering of the form that managers, and that's the way. I don't think managers get judged over a whole season nowadays. I think a lot of the time recent form does impact a lot of the discourse around managers.
Yeah, but I think that's been the way that probably the way that football in general has changed over the past 10 years, where you've got those teams that probably weren't expecting it. I think everybody would probably say Barrow were one of the surprise teams. Certainly early on, they were very much the surprise team. Probably not to you, Gab, before you start going on again. Probably not to yourself. But I think they were a surprise team. I think when you look at the club and how it's run, I think it's fantastic. But you're right. I think sometimes fans are very, very quick to judge these days. Again, being a Bradford City fan, testament to that, about the amount of managers that we've had over the last 5 or 6 years is pretty mental, really. And it's difficult. So especially for like a manager like Peel Wild, who has, at times this season, they looked absolutely fantastic. Yeah. They've lost a little bit of form. Whether, again, like you alluded to, was that maybe are they running out of energy? That's a possibility.
Like Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, well, yeah, it could be, and then that might be something that obviously people maybe need to look at in the future if that is the case. I will say, for instance, that on Tuesday I did think they were very leggy. I thought that they did look very, very tired footballing team. Certainly in that first half, I think when they got their goal, which was a deflection, I don't want to take too much away from it, but then they started to play a little bit of football, had a little bit of energy, started to come at Bradford, and you start to think, we could be in a little bit of trouble here.
Dobson had that big chance, didn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. But I think that, again, I think heads did slightly start to go. I wouldn't say that we were playing at a particularly fast pace either. I think we were just very slowly controlling the game. I know we had 2 or 3 chances in the first half. We probably should have been 2 or 3 up, but we didn't create super amount of chances. But I think it's difficult. I think I think Barrow fans, I know it's quite frustrating at the moment, but I can only say that, and I know this is no saving grace, but I think you've got to look at whatever happens this season. You've got to see it as a success. You're now a team that intimidate, teams when they come into your ground, and I think that that's something that you should be proud of. And again,
I think, just to jump in there, I think it'll be a success like once the fans have had some time to I don't know, decompress after the season. But I think it's very difficult to see it as a success if they lose to Mansfield on Saturday, just because of the raw emotion of it, and how there is disappointment at how that's unfolded. But I guess I wanted to come to Bradford's side of the victory on Tuesday night, because I want to talk about that strike from Bobby Poynton. I mean, it was like an arrow in there, wasn't it, that volley?
Yeah, I mean, Bobby scored a great work against Tranmere as well, which is top corner. That's just Bobby all over. I think I think when Bobby gets a little bit more football, which he's starting to do, he's starting to finally be in the starting 11. I think we're going to see a little bit more of that of Bobby. Hopefully stays next season. I have heard a couple of rumours that that a couple of championship teams are interested in him. Whether that's the case, I hope it's not. I hope we can manage to get him down for a contract. He's a Bradford City fan. Loves playing for the club. But yeah, I mean, that is just typical Bobby. Bobby's not scared to take anybody on. He's not scared to shoot from 30 yards out or in the edge of the box. I mean, I won't say that was a 30-yarder because it wasn't. But I think that that's what you get from Bobby Poynton. And you'll know I've been banging on about Bobby for probably a couple of years now about his ability. He's still a very young lad. He's still got a lot to learn, but you can start to see a lot of improvements in the fact that he's getting in that first team, the fact that he is now, almost one of the first names on the sheet, which is something we've wanted for quite a while. Alexander, it's taken him.
He had a long time, didn't he? Like months and months where he was in the. I don't even know if he was getting on the bench for a period.
Yeah, he wasn't. There was a lot of time, and that was a bit. We wondered whether he was injured. I don't think that was the case. Just think that Graham obviously felt that we should have gone down another route. I think he just gives us something else in that midfield. I think what we haven't had, Smallwood is your playmaker when he wants to be. He's the one who sometimes likes to put in the right pass. We won't talk about set pieces with Smallwood, but he's that kind of player. And we've had, a few different players in there. Jamie Walker obviously has just come back from injury, but scored 2 goals on Saturday.
Yeah.
Great footballer. But Bobby seems to be, he likes to take players on. He can put in a tackle or two, but he likes to get forward and actually he's not scared to have a shot, which I think at times this season we've struggled to have. Is there a coincidence as well that he's come back into the team and we've gone on our run? I don't think so. I think that he's probably helping us towards that, the on the run that we're having, and it's good to see. It's exciting, and of course because he's one of our own, that's even better. And he's absolutely loved at Bradford.
Yeah, what a superstar he is, and I think there's going to be a big future for him, that's for sure. I want to sort of ask if you feel like the impact of Bobby Poynton has maybe allowed a bit more space for someone like Richie Smallwood to dictate, because you've got that threat, and maybe Jamie Walker, whether you want to lump him into that conversation. You've got a bit more threat between the lines, as well as Andy Cook. You've got Tyler Smith running off him as well. Is there a bit more space now for Richie Smallwood to get on the ball in a way there might not have been before this run?
I think you saw that. That was absolutely the case against Barrow, and I feel that was why we controlled the game as well as we did. Smallwood was, he was able to be freed up, and I find that with Smallwood is that he needs those players to be there. Jamie, before he got injured, he was out. I think he was out for about 2 months. Before that, he was looking absolutely fantastic. He was, every time he got the ball, he looked like he was going to do something. Obviously got sent off on Saturday, so missed the game on Tuesday. And Alex Gilead came in instead. But I do agree. I think that the pair of them, Jamie and Bobby, are not afraid to go forwards and help out. You've also got Kavanagh as well, who we signed in January from Barrow. He's really made an impact. I think already he's becoming a fan's favourite. In fact, I say he is a fan's favourite. He has such a good work ethic. He will run after everything, scores a few goals. He's not, he's the kind of player I feel that we've missed up front. With Tyler Smith, Tyler's had a difficult year, even believe it or not, even though he scored, I want to say it's 10 or 12, but he got 7, I believe, in the EFL trophy. So he scored a few against some of the younger teams. Of course, the goal on Tuesday was a great finish, and that's what you want to see from Tyler. But he's really struggled. However, I say that, he does seem to have a good partnership with Cookie. They seem to understand each other really well. There's a few goals that we've scored this season where it's been between the two of them and they're passing.
That reverse pass from Cookie to release Tyler Smith was lovely, wasn't it?
But that's what Cookie has done on quite a few occasions this season. That's not the first time he's done that, and it's probably not the first time it's not the first time he's done that with Tyler either. They do seem to have a real understanding of each other. However, Kavanagh for me is ahead of him. If we can get Kavanagh and Cookie to get kind of the same understanding as they do. I'm not saying they don't currently, but if they could get the same understanding as them two, I think we're in for possibly a good season next year, or even an exciting another 3 games after Saturday.
Well, that brings us back, I guess, to the playoff equation. So, first of all, I'd like to hear from Sam Jordan, who sent me a 2-minute video on Crawley's chances.
Crawley Town have had a fantastic season this season. Off the back of last season's real battle to avoid the drop, Crawley have guaranteed a top 10 finish and go into the final day of the season needing a win to keep their playoff hopes alive. Obviously, we've got other teams that could pip us, but if we can get the win, I'm sure one of the other 3 will lose and we can finish 7th, and then we're in the playoffs and who knows what will happen. Looks like we could face a trip to MK Dons, who have had 2 good battles of this season, and the way we play football up against MK, who play a similar style of football, should be a great match to see and get to Wembley. In terms of how the season's panned out, Scott has spent the summer embedding a very good on the eye style of football, which the fans really enjoy watching. Some fans might get frustrated at times because Scott's plan B is his plan A, but it's fantastic to watch our intense pressing style, pinging the ball round. We regularly have 65 to 70% possession, and nearly every game more than double the passes the opposition team have. We've got some great players in our team this season. Daniel Orsi scored 20 goals in his first prolific season in the Football League. Clyde Lolos has chipped in a few goals recently. Liam Kelly pulling the strings in midfield alongside the tough tackling Jay Williams. Corey Dye's really come on in goal. And Scott's got a lot of credit to take for how well the team's done this season after last season's struggles. Turn this team around, bring in new players, change the style of football, and go from third bottom to a top 10 finish, hopefully a playoff finish, is absolutely remarkable. I think we'll do well to keep him and a lot of our other players in the summer.
And then I might bring in Simon from Walsall Fan TV, who have got a slim chance, the Saddlers, of making the top 7.
Gabriel Walsall's chances of making 7th at this stage, I think we've got to say very remote. Very remote. The defeats at home to Bradford and Notts County have really sort of took it away from us. Disappointing, but it's been pleasing to be up there and in the fight, as it were. And if there's a very strange set of results, Walsall might even do it. Wimbledon Walsall on Saturday. Walsall need to win by perhaps 3 goals. That would be some result. If we do that, we're then relying on Bradford, who've won 5, drawn 1 of the last 6, to lose at home in a key game to Newport, who've lost 7 on the bounce. So that's fairly unlikely. Then we've got Crawley. They've slipped up of late, but against Grimsby at home, you would think they would secure their spot. But a defeat at home to Grimsby would start to make things a bit interesting. And then the final fixture, Barrow can't get a win at the minute. They're really off it, aren't they? At home to Mansfield, they'll be celebrating promotion at Barrow. So a 3-goal swing for Mansfield is likely, I would think. So if Walsall do their bit and get a 3-goal swing, we could get up on goals scored. But of course, we're relying on Bradford to not beat Newport, and they are flying at the minute. And we're also depending on Crawley not to win. So all in all, can't see it happening really. But if Walsall win away at Wimbledon, which again is a tough proposition, it'll secure our place in the top 10, which will mean we've had a good season. So got to be happy with that. I think all in all, Walsall just didn't quite have enough. Couple of injuries have not helped. The defence actually improved when we had injuries. But up front, Jamil Matt, not at full fitness, affected us. Losing Freddie Draper, of course, was not great in January. And then the lack of appearances for Danny Johnson could have also, has hampered us. But good luck. I think Crawley and Bradford will sneak in, because Crewe are away at Colchester. So I wouldn't be surprised if Colchester win that. And then Crawley and Bradford will be in there with Doncaster and MK Dons, which will make a very, very tasty set of playoff games. So I think Doncaster, perhaps. But I think MK Dons probably got the most quality out the lot. So I think they'd probably just about squeeze it through. But as I say, the run Doncaster on, you can't count them anything. It's all to play for, isn't it? But Walsall aren't going to be in there, I don't think.
There you go. Those are the views of Simon from Walsall Fan TV, and thanks also to Sam Jordan for his insight as well on Crawley Town. So, Chris, I've got a question for you. Have Bradford City ever been in a position where you need to score a certain number of goals to get automatic promotion, to stay up, or to get into the playoffs in a game, or have you ever been in that situation?
I think the one that comes to mind straight away for me is actually in the playoffs, League One playoffs against Sam Allardyce's Blackpool at the time.
Okay.
So we were 2-0 down in the first
Late
game.
90s, was this?
This was 1996. That better be right. Otherwise, I'm going to be, 2-0 down. We lost 2-0 at Valley Parade in the first leg. Blackpool had in their match day programs had put in how to get to Wembley and all of this kind of stuff. Chris Kamara, who was the manager at the time of Bradford, he didn't give a, so he put that up on the wall and said, there's your pre-match talk. Have a look at that. And we came back and we won 3-0. And we
so with that in mind, I've got the sort of follow-up question is, at what point do you play just to win a football match, any football match, and at what point do you start thinking about, we've got to inject some urgency here because we need X number of goals? Because I think it's a big balancing act. I think if you go too early on the number of goals, I think sometimes you can get picked off and you lose a bit of shape and all the rest of it. But I think if you lose too late, you go for it too late, then I think time could march away from you. And by the way, this is Walsall's position because they've got to try and score a certain number of goals at Wimbledon.
They've got to score them early doors, Gab. I think you've got to get those goals in straight away. I think that is what the fans are going to be wanting and hoping for. I think if you're leaving it too late, that's where the pressure is added. That's where mistakes are going to be made, and that adds a lot of that. I think if you go 3-0 up quite quickly, I think that the team also against you are probably going to think, their heads are going to go down. There's potential to get a couple more goals. I think you've always got that pressure. I think it's both ways. I think that, if you're leaving it too late, you've got, they've got potential to get the goals. I think mentally, I think that you have to be trying to get those goals early doors and trying to finish that game as soon as possible. Otherwise, it's that fear factor. But the great thing about football is, there is always that potential that you've got that 99th minute corner and you got that goal, and you'll never forget that for the rest of your life. And you'll always say about how amazing that was, rather than, well, we won 3-0 after 15 minutes. And that's the great thing about football, isn't it? That it's those memories that you're going to get as a football fan. But as a player, I think you're trying to get that job done as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. But that does make a lot of sense. But it's still certainly a big ask for Walsall. But the situation for Crewe is a lot more favourable, and this is one thing that I'm really interested in. A point gets Crewe into the playoffs, right? And a point also keeps Colchester up. And 6 years ago now, we saw Coventry draw 0-0 with Morecambe on the final day of the 17-18 season. Exactly the same situation, pretty much. So I'm wondering, is there going to be a bit of a West Germany, Austria? That's the
right.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. Of course, it is. It's going to go through their heads. Of course, it is. I'm not saying there's going to be match fixing there, but that's certainly going to go. I think if you're talking about maybe the 70th, 80th minute, and you currently got a draw, I think both teams probably do back off a little bit. I'm sure there was, I want to say it was someone like Huddersfield who had the similar situation.
Barnsley, I think, in 2013.
That was it, yeah. And you had a similar situation there. Yeah, I mean, I think that is probably a potential. That's going to happen. I would not be surprised to see that game end a draw. It favours both teams. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what happens on the day. But yeah, I think that's probably going to be in their minds. But I only think that would be in their minds maybe in the 75th, 80th minute. If it's still a draw, I think that's probably going to be the end result.
Well, back in 2013, Barnsley and Huddersfield fans went on the pitch and they both chanted Yorkshire together. So I'm wondering what Crewe and Colchester fans could simultaneously sing about. I'm wondering Chris Porter. They'll both do a pitch invasion and just sing songs about Chris Porter. That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, probably so. I'm sure they will find some kind of link, and they'll probably keep them allies for quite a few years. Maybe that might be something that they can bring up in future games if that is what happens.
Yeah, I'm sure I've got it nailed down, I reckon. I think Crewe are in a very favourable position. I think Doncaster are as well. But I think what's really curious is whether Barrow do their job against Mansfield, and whether you would consider Mansfield a favourable fixture, because I think it's probably preferable to play a side that has their fate sort of established, if you like.
Dad, we've seen Mansfield this season, and I
get. Yeah, Mansfield are brilliant. Yeah,
I get what you're saying, and I know that it's the last game of the season. I just don't see that. I just don't think Mansfield will just sit back and allow that on Saturday. I know. I mean, I don't know if this was just a rumor and it wasn't true, but there was talk about an open bus. Up a parade around Mansfield on the Sunday. Would that really, I think that they're wanting to finish the season off with a bang. Let's remember, we're talking about Nigel Clough here. Nigel Clough is not going to allow them to be on holiday yet. A very astute manager, very strict manager, very similar to his dad. But I don't think that they will put that they pull their foot off the pedal. I think, if I'm honest, I think they'll steamroll Barrow on Saturday. I think it will still be, I think they'll still turn up. And as I say, I think for me, from the games that I've seen, Mansfield have been the best team. I know they haven't won the league. I understand that. But I think Mansfield, for me, have been the best team that I've seen this year, without a shadow of a doubt, if I'm honest.
That's a really good question. Because yeah, they've been such a well-rounded side, haven't they, Mansfield? And I think the thing is, I might be saying Stockport, what's really impressed me is they've been able to tick off points. So they have these 2 long winning streaks in autumn and in spring, and then between them, they sort of managed to grind out 22 points from 16. And I think that was while they had lots of injuries. And I think that was the thing that kind of held them back a bit. So they've been able to kind of grind out points. But Mansfield have been such a complete side because they've still got the strong midfield that's been really good for a number of seasons now. Louis Reed, I think, is that standing footballer. They're more they've still got that attacking quality. Davis Keeler-Dunn's gone up another level, and then defensively they've got a lot better, which I think is the difference from last season's side as well. So I'd struggle to disagree with you there, Chris. I like to try and disagree with you because I feel like I'd be on the right side, but
I think if we look at it, and you're right about Stockport. Stockport's team squad is very big. They have spent a lot of money.
Sure.
I'm not saying that I'm not using that as an excuse, but I think that some of the performances this season, I mean, I'll give you it, for instance, was the tonking of Harrogate, the tonking of Bradford City, at Valley Parade. They seem to be that team that when they've needed to, they've really, really turned it on, where probably slightly unfair. Stockport probably haven't done that as much. They've maybe, sneaked a couple of, I'm not saying every game, but they've sneaked a couple of 1-0s, 2-0s. I think with Mansfield, I think that they have just shown how strong they are. The problem for Mansfield has been just their consistency. When they had that run, was it about a month ago, where they would, they should have won the league. They had a bit of a blip, and that's cost them. Luckily for them, it's not cost them too much because they've got promoted. But I also feel as well about Saturdays that they want that second place. There's a potential that they could be in third place. I don't think they'll settle for third place. I think that, in all honesty, I think Nigel Clough would almost see that as a bit of a failure.
Really?
I honestly, just thinking. I mean, I say that because of because of the kind of man that he is. I'm sure he's fuming at the fact that they're not, that they haven't won the championship.
Do you know what? Though I think that's an interesting point, because I do think a lot of managers, some of the best ones, in fact, are so perfectionistic that anything that's slightly gone against them, they just become furious about. Like John Coleman is like that at times, when it's like if they'd played really well for 85 minutes and then the last 5 minutes they'd sort of let their guard down a bit, he'd be furious. So I do think that managers like John Coleman, Nigel Clough, they are perfectionistic. So I do take your point.
I think that's the word. I think you're absolutely right, and that's the word. It's perfectionists, and I think that is the reason why. I mean, deep down, he's not going to think it's a terrible season. I don't mean it, but I think in his head, he probably will say, "I want that second place. I want to be second. I don't want Wrexham to be in second. I want us to be in second place." And that's why I just think I feel that. I'm very glad that we're not playing Mansfield on the end of the season, and I'm really glad that we're playing Newport, who have lost, I think, is it the last 6. However, that is usually about banana skin for Bradford City. That usually means that we give them the win. But we'll see. I'm just glad that we're not playing Mansfield in the last game of the season.
There you go. Crawley have got Grimsby at home. They've had a great season. What about Danilo Orsi, Chris? Because he'd had a couple of stints in League Two. They didn't quite go as he might have hoped. But it shows that when you get the right managerial and cultural fit, and I really like Scott Lindsay, by the way. I've sort of dealt with him a couple of times for media, and he's such a lovely guy. So I'm absolutely delighted for him that he's doing so well at Crawley. And clearly he's a fantastic coach who can make a real impact on people. And it seems like that's kind of the case with Danilo Orsi, because he scored 18 goals this season. Yeah,
absolutely. What a footballer. I mean, we've been talking earlier on about how everybody's been really surprised by Barrow. How surprised have we been by Crawley? They were, they were favourites to drop this, this summer, last summer. Nobody gave them a hope. I don't think I did. I think I expected them, to fall apart.
They're in my bottom two, Chris. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I want to say I think we played them first game of the season. I might be wrong on that one, but Scott Lindsay, what a job he's done. You know, the style of football that he plays. You know, they've always been that team that everyone's been writing off, obviously, because they're owned by WAGMI. But what he's built for Crawley is exciting. I would also say, I think if they do go up and they do go through the playoffs, I could see them settling in League One with the kind of football that he plays. I don't necessarily think that they would particularly struggle. I think that they are set up in the right manner, and I think that again, if they could keep Lindsay, I don't know if he'll stay.
Yeah, that's the thing. For me, it's the question of resources for Crawley, because
I kind of seen it as a bit of a Stevenage, you know, with what they've done. I mean, Stevenage, to be fair, have got a little bit of, you know, they have had.
Yeah, they've got big external investment. Well, I'm kind of, it feels a little bit ambiguous. I'd like to ask Sam about this if we can get him on the podcast, but last season WAGMI were very much all in on it, and they were paying the big wages to get Dom Telford in, and this season it's been a lot more in terms of cutbacks and letting key players go. So it's really ironic that last season they finished 22nd and this season they could finish 7th, isn't it? That's how sort of crazy it is. But I don't know where it would happen if, let's say, Crawley were to get promoted, what the budget would be, or what the owners would want to do, or how close they'd want to be to the club, or I don't know.
I mean, that's the question, isn't it? It depends on what they're looking for. I mean, are they wanting out now that they've kind of got over that kind of original circus? I think is probably the right word to call it. Obviously, there was interest in buying Bradford at one point, which I'm probably quite happy that never happened.
Sure,
but I think we have to look at the fact that it is the job that Scott Lindsay's done at that club. You know, he's taken the reins. I mean, when they were bringing in, for instance, like Dom Telford, obviously he'd had a fantastic season. They brought him in for big bucks. It didn't really make sense. I mean, obviously, when I say that, people might say, well, you know, he was a striker. He was top goal scorer at the time. It wasn't it didn't make much sense to me because of the rest of the team and how the setup was. It just did. And of course it didn't work. It's not worked out for him at all. And obviously he finds himself at Barrow. But I think Scott Lindsay needs a lot of credit for what he's done. And I think that it goes under the radar a lot at the job he's done. I think it's easy for us to kind of look at the other clubs. You know, obviously you're a massive fan for, you know, big advocate for Pete Wild, as we all know.
Sure.
But I think that we have to look at that and what he's done as it's an incredible job when you look at it and you think about what Crawley have done this season, and they've not gone away. They've not gone away either. They've not had a yo-yo season. They've always been up there or roundabouts, and I
feel like in the second half of the season they've come into it more so, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. But they keep building, and they're another team that everyone keeps going. They'll drop off, but they don't, and they seem to just be a really, really hard-working football team that really work hard for each other, and it's only it's recommended. It's fantastic what he's done there, and I mean, for me, he could potentially be. I would possibly say he's been my manager of the season, to be all honest.
He's mine as well.
Yeah.
There you go. So I want to. I think you'd probably say Crawley have got a good chance of doing the business that they need to do against Grimsby, and then hoping that Barrow fail to beat Mansfield. And I think both those things you'd say would be more likely than not, but it's whether both happen, I suppose. But then I suppose Bradford, you'd be hoping to take advantage if Crawley do slip up.
Yeah, of course we have. I mean, I don't think we genuinely believe that that we're going to get into the playoffs. I certainly don't, but there's still that hope. It's the Grimsby game for me that kind of makes me think. Yeah, I think that's the one that I can't see Grimsby winning that game. I think that's going to be too much for them. I think after the season that they've had, Artell, another one of your favourites. He probably, he needs a summer to kind of sort out what's going on at that football club. It wasn't a great start for him. Maybe in the summer that'll sort it out. But we're certainly not in the driving seat whatsoever, which is weird. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that it's in other people's hands. I'm not used to that. But I do know that I have confidence, actually, weirdly enough, that Bradford will win against Newport. I mean, I was on the Gillingham podcast, what was it, less than a month ago. I said that we were going to lose 3-0. I said that was it, season's over. I've been saying season's over for the last month or so, probably longer. And it's just incredible how football changes things, and how it changes in football. And obviously, if you mentioned obviously about Donny being in 20th in March. Where were we? I think we were something like 17th in March as well. So, two teams that have come from the bottom of the table towards the top. Sure. Again, it just shows that, like I mentioned earlier on, was that, the top teams just have been so inconsistent that they've just allowed everybody else to go, all right, you want to have a try, you want to get promotion, you want to get in those playoff positions, go for it. And it's just been such a strange year for that. But it's great. And this is why I love League Two football. Just hopefully not for much longer.
We'll see. Where was I? In terms of the playoffs, I think we probably agreed then that it'll be MK Dons, obviously, in fourth. Doncaster, I think we're both agreed, will get fifth.
Yeah.
Crewe, I think, will get a draw of convenience against Colchester. And then I think we're both agreed, actually, that Crawley are going to be the other team to get in there, possibly at Barrow's expense.
Yeah, but I can't go again. I'm going to have to say Bradford. You
think Bradford? Actually, now I don't want to go against Barrow. I want to go for the Barrow win.
I have to go for Bradford. My heart rules my head. I'm going to say Bradford are going to get there.
I think MK Dons and Doncaster would be the two big threats. I guess MK Dons have probably been since November. One of the best teams in the league, and they've established such consistency. But then you can't ignore the form that Doncaster have been in, with 9 wins on the spin, and it's such a cliche, but the momentum that gives them that's given them. I'm really excited to see. Do you think we're looking at one of those two that's going to win the playoffs?
Yeah, in all seriousness, yeah. I kind of would like it to be Donny. I think because of what they've done, because of the turn and how they've done it, and again, as I mentioned earlier on about the support of Grant McCann, obviously Mike Williamson coming in, Graham Alexander getting sacked from MK Dons and coming to Bradford. I think again, he's shown what a great manager he is as well. Obviously, you looked at that Gateshead team and some of the football that they were playing, and they were the only team at that time who gave him a chance. But yeah, I think you've got an MK Dons, MK Dons or Doncaster, I think, are one of the teams to do it. However, how many times do we say this about player football? And we always say there's always going to be one team that, that are going to absolutely smash it. And then it ends up being the team that you least expect. And that's the great thing about player football. And I hope we never change it, because it is so exciting.
Certainly is. Well, I think we'll leave on that note. Chris, thanks so much. It's been great to be back podcasting with you. Thanks to Taylor from Barrow earlier as well. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate League Two podcast. See you again soon.